Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our September 2025 session for our Property Network, which is a national network of folks interested in property concerns, whether you're a church leader, a member of a property team, a trustee. This is a place for you. My name is Reverend Melody Duncanson-Hales, and I serve Canadian Shield region in the area of congregational support. I also serve Canadian Shield and Shining Waters in the area of stewardship support. And I'm a member of a team of folks from regions across the country and friends from TUCC, Toronto United Church Council, as well as the United Property Resource Corporation. And there are folks from all of those places joining us tonight, and it's lovely to see folks from across the country joining us this evening. I want to take our time tonight to introduce our guest speaker, who is presenting a really fantastic resource that we've been working on, Daniel's been working on for a few months now, called A Theology of Place, which is intended to be a resource for congregations to consider, open up some reflection on what place and space and property means in your context. Daniel joins us from TUCC, which is the Toronto United Church Corporation. And he's served in ministry throughout the Greater Toronto area. He's also supported the United Church at the regional and national level. I had the first opportunity to meet Daniel as he served on the executive of Shining Waters region. His current work with TUCC focuses on supporting communities of faith in the development and resourcing of creative missional strategy, as well as supporting investing in ministry fund and sustainable energy loan fund. So Daniel comes to us with a whole wealth of working in community, and so has really worked hard to develop a great framework for us to consider tonight. And I just want to invite you to join me in welcoming Daniel this evening. So I can clap or whatever, how you do that on Zoom, but you can say hi to Daniel. And I'm going to remove my spotlight and I'm going to put Daniel on the spotlight tonight.
Thanks for the introduction, Melody, and for setting the scene this evening. I was apprehensive there when you mentioned the first moment that I met Daniel. I was so sure that you were going to say when he was this high.
Well, I think maybe it might have been a rendezvous. I will be
Okay.
honest. I'm pretty sure it was rendezvous
All
back in the
right.
day.
Very good. Yeah. Friends, it's a real pleasure to be with all of you, and it's been a real pleasure to work with the team developing this program over the last couple of years. And um, yeah, I think I just want to start by saying uh, I recognize a lot of faces out there, and some of you are ministers and church staff, but a lot of you are volunteers. And I feel quite grateful that all of you are willing to take some time on a school night at 7 o'clock, at least here in Ontario, um, and come out to participate in a program like this, and it really shows your dedication to the church. And so, thank you for being here. Um, as a part of the work that our team has done in thinking about how to support congregations in the United Church as they think about property, the work that led to the development of this program, one of the things that we collectively recognized is that um, as we make at a congregational level difficult decisions about church property, there's a real longing in congregations to think about those questions through the lens of our faith. And so I'm quite grateful for support from my colleagues at TUCC and in our national network here uh, to have had some support in developing a resource that we're offering out to all of you to make use of in your context and to share with friends and colleagues in other churches that are thinking about property matters to help animate those conversations. And our intention this evening is to walk through that resource, to talk a little bit about the origins of it, but mostly to spend some time in small groups, doing a couple of sample conversations, essentially, uh, thinking through how to make the resource useful in a particular context. So, just for the sake of my own sanity, and so that I don't forget, I'm just going to send a link uh, to the resource in the chat. So, all of you've got it. And I'll also, just in case you're curious, add a link to the resources page on the TUCC website, where the resource can be found and also where other resources can be found as well. As we gather, I'd like to start by sharing some words of prayer as we prepare to talk about the theology of church buildings. I am offering some words of prayer that I have taken from the United Church of Canada's uh, liturgy book, Celebrate God's Presence. This is the liturgy for the dedication of a church building. And they're not words that we hear an awful lot in active congregational life. Um, but I felt it might be useful as we begin our conversation to reflect on the spirit of the words that we can imagine may have been said as each one of our church buildings were first dedicated. Let us pray. Ever-living God, watchful and caring, our source and our end. All that we are and all that we have is yours. Receive the work of our hands as we dedicate this place. We come to praise your name, to ask your forgiveness, to know your healing power, to hear your word, and to be nourished by your table. Be present always to guide and to judge, to illumine and to bless your people. Come, Lord Jesus Christ. You have opened for us a new and living way. Make this a house of prayer and a sign of your presence. Draw us to you when we gather together and when we come alone to rejoice and to give thanks, to find comfort and to find wisdom, to be supported and strengthened. May it be here that we're made one with you and with one another, so that our lives are sustained and sanctified for your service. Come, Holy Spirit. You help us in our weakness. Grant us your gifts and unite us in praise. Open our eyes, our ears, and our hearts. Dwell with us in the fullness of your power. When new members are added to your household, when we reaffirm our faith as we grow in grace through the years, when we're joined in marriage, when we turn to you in need, and at the last, when we are committed to God's gracious hands. Blessed and Holy Trinity, everything in heaven and earth is yours. Amen. As we gather together this evening, we also remember the traditional Indigenous territory on which we gather. TUCC operates in North York, territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Petun First Nation, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. I'd invite you to add a note in the chat about where each one of you are calling from and the territories that you are occupying. Those of you who have dutifully opened up the Theology of Place document together and begun to skim through, um, or those of you who have seen it already, will note section 2 uh, on page 4, the reality of injustice. Um, we note that there's an ongoing material dimension to sin and injustice, including the concentration of wealth and the exploitation of land and resources. We're called to acknowledge the reality of systemic evil. We remind ourselves that the church, with its often large and valuable properties, is a part of this narrative, particularly in Canada, where colonial dispossession directly intertwines with both our religious identity and our property ownership. As we reflect on our call, as we reflect on our history, and as we reflect on our future, and as we do all of these things, often in large, beautiful buildings on large properties, let us also remember that privilege and the call to solidarity, to dismantling injustice, and to promoting reconciliation. I'm going to share my screen. I wanted to talk about the way that we live out our theology a little bit. Um, I'm afraid to admit that sometimes we feel like church primarily takes place at 10:15 on Sunday morning. I'm afraid to admit that sometimes it feels like it primarily takes place through the singing of songs, the praying of prayers, the listening to sermons, and is followed by a delicious lunch with one's friends. I'm afraid that sometimes we think about the life of faith as something that is each one of us to take up primarily alone. Um, and I feel challenged personally by the invitation to think about my Christianity as something which I am obligated to live out pretty much every hour of the week, other than Sunday morning, when I get a brief respite to sing songs and to pray and to send myself rejuvenated once more for the week to come. I wanted to share some words from Diana Butler Bass that helped to frame an invitation for us to think about um, our church operations, uh, the work that we do Tuesday evening at a finance committee meeting or Wednesday morning in a frantic email exchange as just as important to how we live out our faith as the work that we do together as we gather on Sunday morning. This is from Christianity After Religion. In God's kingdom, there will be no barrier of space or time between us and God's presence. Intimacy with God, as in the intimacy of prayer, will be the very nature of God's kingdom. In the here and now, prayer creates connection and relationship with God, even as it embodies the sure hope that God is our eternal friend. All Christian practices work in this way. The practice of hospitality opens our hearts to those who are strangers. It anticipates that in God's kingdom there will one day be no strangers. The practice of forgiveness cleanses our souls from guilt and shame. It anticipates that in God's kingdom all will be forgiven. The practice of charity shares what we have with those who suffer want. It anticipates that in God's kingdom there will be no more hunger, pain, sorrow, or fear. The practice of stewardship creates a generous spirit. It anticipates that in God's kingdom money and possessions will cease to exist and that all is God's. Practices shape us to be better, wiser, more gracious people now, even as these very practices anticipate in our lives and communities the reality of God's kingdom that has entered into the world and will one day be experienced in its fullness. My question for all of you is, what are the practices of property stewardship? What do they say about our belief about God's kingdom? How do we live into each one of those with the hope and the assurance that we are practicing uh, a skill, a habit that will set us up to embody that renewed world? As we think about church buildings, um, sometimes we ask ourselves, how accessible is our facility? Are we being public, intentional, and explicit in being affirming? To what extent does our building actually support our programming and ministry? What are the balances around rentals and community use? How's that lived out? How do we balance the other's need against our own? How do we respond to obvious poverty in our midst? And how does our building support that? How do we think about nesting congregations with different theological frameworks from ours? How do we balance our hope for the future against the uncertainty of that hope in a deeply flawed world as we navigate development and redevelopment projects? What do we do with excess property when we enter into an amalgamation agreement with one another? I think that each one of us can feel the theological dimensions to each one of those questions as we think about them. And oftentimes, we don't experience those questions on their own. Recently, I was chatting with a colleague of mine in the Anglican Church, nobody that you know, uh, who was working with his congregation to imagine building an elevator in their facility. They've got an aging congregation. They've are seeing the need to be more accessible in order to serve the larger community. They have a space in the original blueprints of their church facility from 1883. That's not true. Much more recently than 1883, in which space was set aside in the hopes that an elevator might in the future be built. Um, and they're getting pushback from members of the congregation. The elevator area will disrupt some of the congregation's groups who currently make use of that area for their storage. I won't say which groups. Um, and they're already being a little bit squished within their church facility by having recently engaged in a strategic plan around becoming more of a community hub to increase the usage both for community engagement purposes and in the hopes of new rental revenue. There are complex interlocking theological dimensions that come into play as we navigate those questions. So that's what we're trying to do. Why are we using the Song of Faith? Partially because it's fun, partially because it's pretty, partially because I like it, um, partially because early on in my ministry, my colleague Henry Putiainen um, used the Song of Faith to animate some conversations around theology, reading out a chunk of it and inviting reflection from members of the congregation after church on a Sunday. And it was simple and accessible and got people talking. Um, the the framers of the Song of Faith noted that they intended for it to be a means by which the church could express its belief to itself and to the world, a tool to help church's members to reflect on their individual and collective faith. Uh, as I note, it's more descriptive than prescriptive, which is not to say it does not claim to tell the church what it should believe so much as it attempts to put forward in an orderly and evocative way what the church seems to believe based on its actions, its discourse, and its relationships to the Christian tradition and its own history in particular. I as I was reading the appendix in preparation for this, I read the committee noting, in the end, the practical purpose of this document will have to be determined not by the intentions of the committee charged with drafting it, but by the use it ultimately finds in the life and the work of the church. And laughed to myself at how the committee might respond to us making use of it to talk through elevator renovations. And I hope that they are proud. I think that those are all of the things that I wished to say by way of introduction. We've prepared a document and we hope it will be useful to congregations as they explore big property conversations or small ones. It's freely available on the TUCC website, and we've shared it with our regional and national colleagues to distribute. It's a fun way of having a short and accessible conversation with your congregation, for example, after worship one day. And it helps us to begin to think about um, that big question of how the practices of property stewardship contribute to that larger vision of moving in the direction of God's kingdom. I have talked far too long, I feel already, and I'm growing sick of my own voice, uh, as I often do. Our intention this evening is to split into some small groups and to make use of the document. I've sent out a link to the PDF in the chat, and Melody, I'd be grateful if you'd be willing to repost it for those who have joined since I did so. I would be grateful if you'd be willing to click that link and open it up on your computer. We're going to split you up into breakout rooms, and we're going to spend about 10 minutes or so, let's say 12 minutes, saying hello, getting ourselves organized, and introducing ourselves, and then working our way through one of the sections. I've got we're going to do it 3 times. We'll change small groups each time, so you're not spending the whole night with the same folks. And we'll look at 3 different sections of the document. In the first, we'll invite you to imagine that you're getting pushback on the idea of building an elevator. In the next, we'll invite you to imagine that you are thinking about amalgamating and beginning reflection on which property to use for the newly unified congregation. And then in the third, we'll invite you to imagine that you're getting some complaints from neighbors about food bank users. Um, I'm not dead certain that each of the sections that I have chosen corresponding to those are the perfect ones, but if you find yourselves talking about your own church and the issues that you are facing in your context, I shall not scold you. But that is, broadly speaking, the plan. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll split you up into breakout rooms. Good to have all of you back again. I'm not going to have you stay back for very long before I send you back out into new groups. But I'd invite you to just take a minute and jot down a sentence in the chat of any particularly evocative ideas that came up from your conversation.
Maybe I could start from group 3, I guess we were. I think one of the things that came forward from our group was to, rather than our starting point for discussions for an item like an elevator or anything that's going to represent a major capital expense, start with a discussion of the need for that and how that fits the values both of our church and the broader church. And then from that point, maybe we can find the ways to finance it rather than just worrying about the cost.
Super, thank you. I'd invite you to continue jotting your clever ideas down into the chat. And if you haven't had the chance to download the resource yet, I'd also invite you to do so that we can all have a look at it as we work through conversation number 2. I'm going to send you back out into different breakout rooms this time. Invite you to imagine that you are thinking about amalgamating, beginning to reflect on which property to use for the newly unified congregation. I'll invite you to navigate to page 8, and maybe one person can read the relevant portion of the Song of Faith, one person can read the reflection, one person can read the questions, and then we'll spend another 10 minutes in conversation. So I'll send you out now, and the other piece I guess I should say is that if there's some real insights from the first conversation that are relevant, no shame in bringing those along with you as well. Okay, I'll see you in 10. I will once again simply briefly invite you to share any big insights in the chat, and then we'll head out into our next conversation.
In our chat, we were talking about the idea of amalgamation and stuff, and which church you keep, which one, whatever. And one lady suggested that maybe what you should do is get somebody who does not go to either church, does not necessarily even go to church, and have them assess things just as somebody assessing things who has no connection whatsoever as to which is the better choice and that sort of thing. rather than leaving it to the emotions of the people making that decision. I think maybe ours might have turned out differently if we'd had somebody outside looking at things and saying, what's it going to cost to maintain this church compared to that church, and so on. And Melanie knows what I'm talking about. The other
Totally
church
know what
would
you're
have been,
talking about.
the other one would have been way cheaper to maintain and
Yeah.
keep going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mary Alice.
So does the United Church have any such person floating around to do that?
Sometimes you could invite someone from a neighboring area, right? So, and that's sometimes where reaching out into your region helps if you're looking for that outside support.
I would say UPRC does some work like that
Yeah.
with congregations as well. So if you wanted to reach out to UPRC, we'd certainly be able to help with some of that work.
Okay, thank you.
All right, gang. We're going to do one more conversation. New breakout rooms this time, although maybe you'll start to see some familiar faces in the third. We're going to invite you to navigate to page 5, section 3, Our Place and Community, to imagine that perhaps you're getting complaints from neighbors about food bank users on the church's front steps, making lots of noise and littering on the property. And these prompts are just to spark conversation and to invite us to think contextually about what it is that we believe and how we live out that faith in our day-to-day decision making. We'll see you in 11 minutes.
3 now, and 1 and 3.
I'm almost done, just so you know.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
Turning things over to you momentarily.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Mary Alice, Patricia. Gosh, there's my timer. Pardon me. Welcome back, everybody. Good to have all of you, and I hope that conversation was useful. Once more, you're invited to share some insights in the chat and reflect on what's come out of the conversation. I gave all of you a situation to imagine because I knew I would have thoughtful church leaders, ministers, well-read theologians, and wanted to give all of you a bit of a challenge. This is a resource that certainly we imagine can be used to animate intense conversations around a given issue that is taking place. But we're all facing an ambient situation in the life of our congregations where property issues are either coming up or are going to come up. And so While it can be used to animate a specific conversation, we also invite you to just have a look at this document and the theological conversations that it might spark to start thinking about the relationship between property and theology. You know, not when it starts to pour, but on the sunny day when you've got a little bit of breathing room as well. As we were putting it together, we thought might be useful for a church board or for a trustees or property committee to maybe make use of the resource in bite-sized pieces at the beginning of a meeting, taking just a few minutes to read and to reflect on maybe one section before going on to the practical decisions that need to take place in a given meeting and sort of working through each of the sections over the course of months. Could be used for congregations engaging in long-term planning, working on a strategic plan or a vision or something like that. The resource could form the foundation of a day of discernment and visioning. Perhaps the facilitator could invite exploration of each section, offering an opportunity for the congregation to name how their property use aligns with the theological commitments that are reflected in the commentary. Perhaps the reflections could spark a sermon series exploring faith and place and stewardship. Ministers could reflect on the call to be faithful stewards of space, engaging with the themes of hospitality and justice and hope. And we also wondered whether it could be a resource for a focused study, either for the members or for congregational leaders on what it means to be property trustees and stewards rather than owners. How do we steward a place that has welcomed and shaped us rather than inviting conversation and a framework of exploring how we steward a place that has welcomed and shaped us, rather than just thinking about how we maintain a building that we own, contributes or can contribute to shifting our perspective from scarcity and burden to gratitude and to faithful discernment. Those are that's what I wanted to talk about. The resource is freely available. You've got it. Feel free to pass it on. And if you have bright ideas or a section that you really feel should be in there, you've got my email address there on the screen, and I'm not afraid to do a second edition as required. That's all for me. Thank you so much for your thoughtful engagement and your participation in the small groups. I know that they're not everybody's thing, but it's a really great opportunity to dig deep. And so thanks for all of your time and faithful attention. I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Melody to do some announcements about upcoming sessions and to close us out with some words of blessing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and I hope you join me in gratitude for Daniel's work, for the wider work to the wider church. It's such a gift. I've enjoyed it. I know Mary Alice was here. There you are, Mary Alice. I don't know if you noticed it. I was mentioning to Daniel that when this was in development, I used little bits and pieces of this for our visioning day. So when we were talking about some of our property conversations. So I want to say thank you very much to Daniel. Upcoming sessions, remember that our property network meets online the second Wednesday of every month, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we are so excited to welcome you. This is a space that is really for you. So we're always interested. If you have topics that you would like to explore nationally, reach out, say, hey, we're dealing with this issue. We wonder if there's something that others are engaged with. Maybe we can bring in a speaker. We're always looking for different subject ideas. So if you would like to name those in the forums that we have on our course page, just let us know what we can do to help support these really, really important conversations across the country. Upcoming, we have October I'm going to look at my dates here, October the 8th, and we would like to talk about hospitality with our property. Now, we're thinking, and maybe we're not so far off the mark, you can let us know, but is October too early to be thinking about the Advent and Christmas season? Probably not, because we need to be prepared. And we know that in Advent and a Christmas season, we are welcoming many, many people. And we would hope on our October session to have a conversation about hospitality and how we can be aware of our property and what our property is saying and how we're welcoming people to our property. So that's a really important conversation, and we hope you can join us for that. In November, on November the 12th, we are considering how to balance a welcoming environment with safety concerns. So we have heard tonight, we've done a little exploration, for example, on the case study of the food bank ministry with folks that have concerns in the neighborhood or maybe within the congregation. And we know that many, many churches who serve marginalized people are challenged with that balance between open arms but safe boundaries. So we are going to engage in that conversation in November. Again, if you have ideas that you would like us to explore together as a network, we're more than happy to hear those. And you can always use the forums or respond to us by email. Let us know what you're thinking. And now I would like to invite us into just a moment of blessing and prayer as we conclude our time together. So let's take a deep breath, and may we all go now with gratitude for the places that have shaped us, with courage for the decisions that are still before us, and with hope that God's Spirit is already at work in all of creation. And may the love of Christ guide our discernment, the justice of God challenge our choices, the presence of the Spirit holds us together as one body entrusted with God's mission. May we go in peace this evening to steward faithfully, to imagine boldly, and to live with deep hope. Amen. And thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.